Welcome to the Brewing Fiction Podcast. This week, I welcome Mark Aeschlimann from Perth, Australia. This freshly published author of A Dawn Left Behind shares the inspiration for his first novel in a series named The Tales of Matthew Parlour. One interesting tidbit about this series is how Mark decided to immortalize his brother-in-law, who passed away in 2018. Listen to Mark discuss his vision for the series, as well as his experience in navigating the publishing landscape and suggestions for self-publishing. Also, stay tuned to hear about plans for a collaborative giveaway with 19 other authors. Imagine winning novels from 20 authors across multiple genres. Get the details here on the Brewing Fiction Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Brewing Fiction Podcast. Joining me today from the other side of the world in Perth, Australia, is Mark Aeschlimann. Mark, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure for sure. We were just talking offline that it's already nighttime over there. It's still dark here in the morning, so you're 14 hours ahead of us. You're the furthest away that I've ever had a guest thus far. Right?
It's dark in both places, so it's like we're in the same place.
Correct. You guys are, in spring over there, right? Heading into summer?
Yeah, it should be a bit warmer than it is, but it's still quite cool, which is strange.
Is it? Okay, yeah. Yeah, we've got a phenomenal day starting out here today, but it's going to drop down. Are you guys Fahrenheit or Celsius?
Celsius.
Celsius? Great. No, so we can talk the same language here. We're heading to
I have no idea about Fahrenheit.
Me neither. And a lot of my guests are from the US, and it's always Fahrenheit, and I'm like, okay, I don't know. I just know around 70 degrees is comfortable, but beyond that, I don't really know. We're headed to 20 degrees today for the last week of October. That is fantastic. We're usually down single digits by now, or minus. So,
oh wow.
Do you guys ever get below zero?
Not where I am. Yeah, it gets close. There's some places in the hills that it gets to below zero. Yeah, on the western side, there's no snow.
Beautiful. Mark, let's just slide over into Author's Corner here. And that's where I give you a couple of minutes to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we will get into the next segment. So please feel free.
Yep. So, as been said, my name is Mark Aeschlimann. It was really good to hear you get it right.
I asked my son, I asked my wife, how would you pronounce this? Yeah, I'm glad I got it right for you.
Usually people have a lot of trouble. So that was good to hear. So yeah, I'm 40 from Perth. I am a website developer by day and now published author. I've just released my first book on October 1 called A Dawn Left Behind. It's a young adult contemporary fantasy, and it's book one of a series that I'm writing called The Tales of Matthew Parlour. My mum is English, my dad is Swiss, first generation Australian, massive geek, so Star Wars, MCU, D&D, anything that's fantasy or sci-fi is up my alley. Learning to play the bass guitar, learn to sketch, listen to a lot of music, into politics, which not great for the mental health these days.
It's interesting how right around the world it's the same thing. So you say that not great for your mental state. Is that because of Australian politics or more world politics?
Everywhere right now. So
yeah, well, because I mean the US, right? They're headed to an election next week. Canada is kind of in shambles here, and sounds like you guys too.
Yeah, I pay way more attention than I should. It's actually been good releasing this book the last few weeks. Just trying to push my book out on social media has meant that I've paid a lot less attention to politics than I usually would have. So that's been really, really good.
Well, congrats on the release, by the way. First, when I hooked up with you, I hadn't realized that your first book was like just a couple weeks back. So how's that been going for you?
Slow, to be expected, especially when I came in having no idea what I was doing. But but it's been really good. I gave a bunch of copies to friends and family, and they're starting to get into it, and feedback's been very positive. So that's really good. I don't know if they're lying or not, so we'll see.
Friends and family, who you can't really trust them, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure it's great. Oh, good for you. And like you said, it's a great distraction and gives you something to look forward to. You have a number of books in the series you want to write, correct?
Yeah, so there's going to be 6 in this main series with a couple of, not necessarily spin-off, but like origin story type things for some of the characters. And I spent a lot of time building out the world. So there's kind of dead races and that kind of stuff that will come in and can have their own series and stuff. But just in the Matthew Parlour series, it's going to be 6.
Fabulous. How about we do a little fast 5? This is just a little bit of fun. Not as much fun as we were having on Instagram there with the whole goat thing, but that was hilarious when you sent that. I was like, oh, I can't just leave it. I have to have a little bit of fun before I go to bed. Anybody who's listening who wants to check that out, look us up. It was good for a laugh. All right, fast 5. Mark, you get to choose which of the 2 word pairs is your favorite, just for us to get to know you a little bit better. And I always start with this one. Do you like coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Vinyl music or digital music?
Digital. I'm lazy.
Digital. Have you ever listened to vinyl?
Yeah, my parents had records way back in the day.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, it's been a very long time. I'm not sure how good our record player was, so I can't really tell the difference.
Fair enough. Would you prefer, okay, not necessarily writing a book because you can't do it by pen anymore, but would you prefer a pen or a keyboard?
Keyboard.
Keyboard?
A web developer, keyboard is my thing. I barely know how to function a pen anymore.
Fair enough. So when you get into sketching, are you using some sort of an electronic device for sketching nowadays, or do you sketch with pencil or pen?
I've been doing it with pencil,
Okay.
but I'm moving on to the iPad.
You're in the digital world now, hey?
Yep.
Okay. For your own writing, do you prefer plot-driven or character-driven stories?
That one is hard. I don't know. There's not really a good answer. Depends on how each are written. Yeah.
The reason I threw that one in there, I have a whole bunch of different ones that I like to throw out just for variety, but I put that one in because I saw your series, right? And I'm like, okay, Matthew Parlour, this has to be a character-driven story. But then at the start, you said, oh, well, I've done so much world building prior to getting into it. So
Yeah.
I'm like, well, maybe not. So both. You're allowed to say both. Yeah. There's no right or wrong answer.
Awesome.
And lastly, do you like to go on writing sprints or marathons?
I guess it just depends on how much time I've got. If I've got the time, then I'll sit there and write for ages. If I don't, then it's going to be a sprint.
Squeeze it in when you can. All right. That was fast 5. Mark, I'm going to start right at the beginning for the interview. What sparked your passion for writing? What got you into your pastime?
Well, I was pretty good in school at creative writing.
Okay.
So I gave it a go when I was a lot younger, back before I had any idea what plotting and pantsing was, and tried to pants it and failed miserably. So that was quickly off the table. So I'd kind of stopped reading for a long time as well, and then got back into it probably 6-7 years ago, maybe. Yeah, pretty much Matthew is based on my brother-in-law who passed away in 2018.
Oh, okay.
So young adult he read a lot of it. He was 18 at the time, so he hadn't really progressed much further.
Yeah.
I wanted to write something to kind of honor him, and also just wanted to write in general. And after being in the web industry for so long and knowing how to plan projects, turned into a plotter and managed to get it done.
There you go. That was one of the questions for Fast 5. I guess I should have thrown that one in there, but you answered it anyway. So there you go.
Yep.
I was going to ask you if Matthew was based on a real life character, because I mean, we write what we know. So a lot of the times there's some sort of relationship to to a person. Was that difficult for you to write, getting started? The fact that you're trying to honor someone who's passed?
Not really. It was quite cathartic.
Okay, good.
And I guess it's written based on how I knew him, so it's not necessarily how his close friends would have known him, which might have been a bit different. But it's definitely how I knew him. So it's kind of trying to continue on from where he was. So he's
Wow.
18 in the book, and some of the locations are kind of similarly based on places where he worked and lived and stuff like that. So it was in some ways easier because I had to do a little less thinking about building those types of things. But yeah, I never really found it hard to do. It was kind of good to do.
Nice. And what age was it you started writing then?
This book I started writing in 2019.
2019. Wow. Did you write anything professionally before you started writing this book?
No.
Nothing.
Went in cold.
Wow. Are you writing anything beside this series currently? Do you have short stories? Do you dabble in anything else at all? Or
I've written a short story. It probably won't ever get published. I started it in 2020. I wrote part 1, and part 2 and 3 I wrote 2 days before releasing A Dawn Left Behind. But it's quite raw, and I don't really want to edit it. And it was kind of a reflection on where I was at the time.
okay.
I'm not sure how interesting it would be for people, but it was good for me to write at the time. I kind of got some things out, and while I was in a certain state of mind, it was easy to put words onto paper based on kind of an extrapolated version of where I was.
All right. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your writing process? So I know you're relatively new in writing. Have you developed a process yet?
I guess so. I did a lot of research beforehand, YouTube videos and stuff, just seeing how other people did it. And the way that I kind of fell onto doing it all more based on, because I was building out a world as well, I went from a very top level view and just everything gets drilled down. So all of the books planned out already, all 6. The second one is the least planned out. It was originally going to be 5. And
Okay.
I didn't want to move the characters away from where they were yet. So I decided I wanted to do another one in between, and it feeds into book 3 pretty well. So everything's very top level. It's a couple of bullet points to start off a story, and then that gets broken down into some bullet points, and that gets broken down, and everywhere I just keep breaking down until I've got set chapters, and then just chapters of heaps of bullet points that gets fleshed out into a proper story.
I like that. I'm a pantser, so I'm always enthralled when somebody talks about a process like that. When you break it down to bullet points, I'd be like, oh, yeah, I wish I could. And maybe I need to try it sometime. So
I'm in IT, so I just can't do it any other way.
yeah, that's how your brain works, right? Yeah. Fair enough. When do you like to write? Obviously, when you're not working, but are you morning, evening, weekend?
Usually nighttime is when things come best for me. Annoyingly, a lot of the time it's when I'm going to bed, and I get a lot of my best ideas then when I should be trying to go to sleep, which is super annoying. But yeah, definitely a nighttime reader. It's where I'm most awake.
Okay, go figure, right? I don't know if it's happened to you, but I wake up at 3 or 4 in the morning, and I've come up with a short story idea. Grab my phone, type it down, so you don't forget the idea, and then that's a short story. The next time you sit to write, it's crazy how your mind works.
Yeah, I've definitely done some late night note taking in the middle of the night.
I'll classify you as a young adult fantasy author because this is where your series lies.
Yeah.
What attracted you to the genre?
Fantasy was the easy go-to. I've always read fantasy.
Okay.
So that was a pretty easy decision for me. Matthew also loved fantasy, so it was very easy to slot him into something like that. But you got to write what you love to read. So yeah. I love to read that kind of stuff. Matthew loved to read it. It was super easy for that. In terms of making it young adult, I think it's probably because I like things that are a bit more to the point. a bit more of a light-hearted adventure, as opposed to, there's some serious themes within it, but it's all pretty fun going. So it definitely just turned into that naturally as I was coming up with all of my ideas.
So it was not planned. It's just where it falls.
Yeah. I mean, it was either going to be young adult or new adult, and I naturally moved towards young adult, made it easier. I'm not really into like spice and romance and all that kind of stuff when I'm reading. So I was never going to be writing that kind of stuff. So it was natural progression.
Fair. Okay. So you read fantasy. Do you have a favorite author or a favorite series that you take as a bit of an inspiration when you're writing?
I mean, the lazy answer is Tolkien, obviously. I loved the Raymond E. Feist books when I was younger, starting with Magician and going through all those series. At the moment, I'm reading the Awaken Online series. That is by Travis Bagwell, and that's really good. It's lit RPG, so it's something that I had no idea even existed before I started reading it. But it's really good. It just exists in two worlds, like inside a game and in the real world, and it has two kind of, the outside world is sci-fi, the inside the game world is fantasy. So it's a really interesting mix.
Okay. Yeah, interesting. I'm learning so many different genres since starting the podcast, but a number of episodes ago, I interviewed Double Blind, and they have a lit RPG series called Everyone's a Cat Girl. When you said lit RPG, I'm like, I know what that is. It feels pretty good. 6 months ago, I'd have been like, yeah, I have no idea.
It's definitely something that had to wait for the games industry to catch up before that could actually happen.
Do you like that type of writing because of your work background, being an IT guy and a self-professed geek?
Not really. I mean, I've always just been into sci-fi and fantasy, so it just works for me.
Okay.
I do game a bit, so and I love my RPG games, so I understand what's going on pretty well from the get-go.
Fair. Yeah, I was going to ask you what the first thing you ever published was, but you've already answered that. A Dawn Left Behind. Self-published, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So can you share a little bit about that whole process? So not the writing and the editing, because I think as aspiring writers, the listeners will know what that is, but a lot of us haven't gone down the road that you have with your self-publishing. So would you mind sharing some of that fun?
Yep. I mean, it was a lot of research, a lot of YouTube videos, a lot of documents read to work out exactly how to do this kind of thing myself. I actually got onto social media with this really late. I've got an Instagram account that's private, that's my own personal one, but I had to create new accounts just for essentially my author presence. And so I didn't really have time to build up a base before releasing the book. So I definitely, if I did it again, would have started that a lot earlier and built up a bit more momentum. But in terms of the actual publishing part, it wasn't too hard. Being a web developer, online platforms are kind of my go-to thing in general. So that was not a huge leap for me to learn how to do that kind of stuff. It was more, I guess, more stressing out about making sure that the files were formatted correctly, not having any idea about publishing books. It was a bit of a stressful time uploading and waiting for them all to get the green light. But yeah, it's not too bad. At the start, I went with as many platforms as I could. I've since moved on to Kindle Unlimited and taken it off the other places just to hopefully drive a bit more interest. But eventually I see myself going back to the other platforms.
Right. Yeah, I think with Unlimited, Kindle Unlimited, you have a set time where it has to be theirs only.
Yeah, it's 90 days. So we'll see how it goes during that time. I also signed up with Ingram Spark. So physical distribution is all going through them, except on Amazon. I've got my own set ones on there. But I'm not exactly sure how that works. I don't know who it's being distributed to. I just get reports occasionally that tell me that something's happened.
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, it's still new, right? Not even a month into it yet, so you can't expect to have all the answers and know all the details. But it sounds like things are going in the right direction, at least, right? You've got digital. So Kindle Unlimited is digital, right? Ingram Spark, that'll be world distribution. Yeah.
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 Yeah, I'm not sure exactly how it works. I occasionally do a Google search for the name of the book, and some new places are advertising it. So
Okay.
it's getting to places, I
That's a
assume.
good. That's a good thing. It's a good thing when you can Google yourself and or your book and find it. Yeah. Cool.
Just got to force myself to make sure I'm not obsessively Googling all the time.
Yeah, I bet that first couple days, maybe even the first week or two, was a lot of that. Yeah,
Yep.
I imagine. So, why did you choose the self publishing route? Did you try traditional publishing, or was this just something you were more comfortable jumping into?
I tried traditional a while back. It was ages ago, maybe a year, possibly two ago,
Okay.
and didn't get any traction on it. I mean, young adult fantasy is quite a saturated market. So, yeah, a lot of places are saying they're not even looking. So when I found out that I could self-publish and found out that it wasn't a huge stretch for me to work out how to do, I was pretty happy to go down that route. And it doesn't mean it'll always be that way, but I'm pretty happy with. I mean, my goal was always just to get it out to essentially just immortalize Matthew, and that's been done. So anything that happens now is kind of a bonus on top.
I was going to say it's already a win in your eyes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Your number one piece of advice for anybody who is considering self-publishing.
Expect that it's going to be a slow slog. And so just don't obsess and enjoy the ride. If you stress too much about getting things going too quickly, then you're just going to be a complete wreck.
Gotcha.
So I guess really diving into the social media aspect of things has kind of been very helpful, because it's good to get a positive community and get people really willing to just give advice to anyone.
Yeah. That's great advice. Don't stress about it. I mean, the traditional route is not any easier from what I understand. In some previous interviews, they talk about traditional versus self-published. And there's as much stress in the traditional side of things as it is self-published. At least you have a little more control when you do it the way you've done it. Right.
Well, that's the thing. If you're a control freak and you go traditional, then everything's out of your hands. So
yeah,
you don't have much control over it.
Yeah, for sure. So, and I don't know if you're aware of the stat, but there's like 96% of traditional published authors sell less than 100 books. You'll probably have overtaken them within your first year, versus that's a lifetime of 96% of traditional publishers. So, yeah, I think with social media, you'll be able to garner more following than that.
I hope so.
Yeah. So I know you've kind of leaned into this a little bit, but if you wouldn't mind, can you just tell us the vision of your series? You know, you went from a 5-part series, you've opened it up to 6. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah. So it's kind of split into 2 different sections. The first 3, a lot of it is to do with Matthew answering questions that he has from the start and trying to work out why certain things happened, why he wasn't told certain things. He gets a bunch of little artifacts that he's trying to work out what they do. So it's a lot of question answering. And then the second 3, it's kind of the world is falling apart and we've got to try and do something about it.
Okay. All right. So, and you said you've already got them all plotted out, so you're ready to go. It's just a matter of physically getting the words on paper, right?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
So trying to find time, that's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Had a hard day at work and your brain's just not into writing words.
Right. Have you ever sat down to write after a tough day and written, and then you look at it a couple days later when you're in a better frame of mind and say, oh, that is rubbish. Like, what was I thinking? Have you ever had that happen to you?
Not really. I think because I have it so well planned out. I mean, there's been times I've looked back later on when I'm editing and seen something that's written and thought, that just makes no sense at all.
Who
But
wrote
yeah,
yeah.
which considering I've got bullet points for everything, I'm not sure how it came about, but that must have been one of those bad days.
Fair enough. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I write a lot of microfiction and short stories. So some days, if it's a tough day or something happened in your life that just, something hurtful or something tough to go through, I can go through some of my short stories. Say, oh, I remember that day.
The short story that's in 3 parts is kind of, it was where I was at the time. So
Yeah.
I can read that back and know exactly the reasons why I wrote that.
Good. Yeah. Awesome. And where are you right now in book 2 in terms of the writing or the whole process?
That one is still very much in the planning phase.
Because that's kind of the newest, right? Book
Yeah.
2.
So I've written 1 or 2 chapters because it takes off like straight away from the first book. So I knew exactly how it was going to start. A couple of days ago, I finally came up with some good bullet points for how it's actually going to work. So I think I'm getting to the point where I can just drill down properly and really get stuck into it.
Okay, cool. How long did it take you to write book 1, and how long do you think it's going to be before book 2 is finished? I know then there's editing and there's beta readers and all. I mean, I know there's a process. I'm not familiar with it. I haven't done it, but I know there's a process. But do you have somewhat of a timeline in your mind?
Not overly. The first book took me a year to write, and that was during COVID. So I had a lot more time on my hands.
Yeah.
So this one, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, I do have a lot of spare time, but at this point, I'm putting everything into trying to market the first book. So it's
that's true. Yeah.
Once I start slowing down a little bit on that, then I'll have a lot more time to really put into writing book 2. But I think now that I've got a bit of a process, I will probably be able to get through it a bit quicker. I know that like starting off book 1 was a lot harder than finishing off book 1 in terms of speed, because I really got into a groove by the end. So I think this time it'll probably, once I get going, it'll get going pretty quick.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a easier process because you're just replicating what you did in book 1 for sure.
Yeah.
Social media is brutal. I know, trying to use it to grow the podcast here. Oh, first of all, just to do the podcast, okay, there's a couple hours involved in that, but there's more time spent trying to figure out social media and play around with it than there is of recording and editing the podcast.
Yeah. And for the most part, none of us are people who really go out there and are working in the whole marketing industry and are good at selling ourselves. So
it's true.
It's really going against our better judgment to push these kind of things.
That's true. Even with the podcast, same thing, getting guests. We're all kind of introverted people in terms of, I mean, writers are more introverted than extroverts for sure, right? So how do you get introverts to want to talk about themselves?
The plus for me is that online, I'm a lot more open than I am just talking to people. Especially in the last couple of years, I've kind of learned to know who to engage with and who to avoid, and which platforms to avoid. And now
from work specifically.
Not from work, just from. I mean, I love sports. I love football, as in the world football, and so that can be a very, very toxic place. So I've come to learn that who you talk with and who you market yourself to and who's going to help you kind of push your own brand as well.
Fair. Good. Is there anything else your mind wanders to, anything else that you work on beside Tales of Matthew Parlour?
Nothing I'm working on. I've got like a folder of notes of ideas for different stories, but even those were a while ago. Some of them, they might end up coming to fruition. They were pretty good ideas. So we'll see. At the moment, I'm definitely not bored of trying to do the Matthew Parlour thing. So
you're all in. You're all into that one right now.
Yeah. If I get a few months of really
Yeah.
being sick of it, then I might try and do something else.
Yeah, I don't know if that's going to happen. I can imagine it must be motivation of writing for that particular reason is totally different than sitting down to write something because they just want to write something or an idea popped in their mind. But like you said, you just want to keep Matthew alive.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I also spent so much time building that world that I'm really excited to just make as many stories as I can in that world, even
yeah,
outside of the Matthew stuff.
right, right. So when you started writing, what did success look like for you? And there will be a second part to the question of how has it changed now that you're published?
Starting out, success was, I guess, just finishing a book that sounded like someone competent wrote it.
Yeah.
So it was a pretty low bar, but I mean, it's better to try and take it in small steps and then go on to the next goal than to say it's going to be a best-selling book that's
Bestseller.
going to take the world by storm. That's a bit much to expect.
Yeah, you're right.
But now that it's published, I guess just getting more eyes on it and just seeing. I'm sure there's an audience for it. One of my good friends, he's already finished the book and he reads a lot and had a lot of positive feedback. A couple of
Nice.
criticisms and a few typos that he pointed out, which
Of
was
course.
not ideal, but
It happens.
but yeah, for someone who's that knowledgeable about stories and reading and all that kind of stuff, to get the kind of positive feedback that he gave me was extremely encouraging. So it's just getting more eyes on it and building up the reviews, and I
Yeah,
guess it'll start to snowball once more people read it. Get some good word of mouth going as well.
fair. Yeah. Hopefully the Kindle Unlimited works for you. I know I've heard some people use it, and then there's some people who chose not to, tried to go the other route. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong. I think it just depends on what you're comfortable with and what you can stand to look
Yeah,
at every day, right? Yeah,
I mean, I
yeah,
wanted to avoid Amazon, but the problem is so much of the market is on Amazon that it's really hard, especially when you're starting out, to get any kind of traction if you're not on it.
yeah. No, that's fair. I think everybody would love to be able to say, nope, I'm not going that way, but I think you got to be real. They own the market, so especially self-publishing. Where can listeners find your work? Obviously, you said on Amazon or Kindle Unlimited is right now the only place that you can find it digitally. Correct?
Yeah, digitally it's just on Kindle.
Okay.
Physical, I know it's on Amazon because
Probably
I put that
everywhere.
one there, but
Yeah, yeah. Probably everywhere, though. I'm thinking. Yeah.
yeah, I've seen it advertised at Barnes and Noble, not physically because it isn't here, but yeah,
You mean Barnes and Noble isn't in Australia? You mean or?
no.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah.
I mean,
Actually, I don't know
as
that.
far as I know, I haven't
Yeah.
seen
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think it must be American because I don't think there is one in Canada. I see all these people doing book signings and stuff at Barnes and Noble all the time, but it's always, I think it's American.
Yeah.
Somebody will probably
So
correct us.
yeah. So whoever gets it through distribution, it'll be there. I guess it's I guess a Google search away. But
Yeah,
I'm trying to get it in local bookstores, the independent bookstores, to try and get into those.
nice.
Especially around the area that I live, there's a lot of people who still love the old way of just going and browsing a bookstore and picking something up there.
Yeah, where I live, I've got to drive 2 hours to get to a city that's big enough to have a bookstore. We've got small libraries, which might be another avenue if you could go and do a book signing at some libraries and stuff like that. But I don't know physically what you have. Like for to do a bookstore and a book signing for me, it's going to be tough. So at least you have some independent ones close by.
Yeah, and my closest one is like a 5 minute walk, so
Oh,
not
nice.
far at all.
Nice. Have you booked one there yet, or have you inquired, or is that kind of next on the list of things to do?
That's kind of next. I've sent them an email. Haven't heard back yet, so it's probably just going to be drop in there with a copy of my book and try and pitch it to them in person, which I couldn't think of anything worse.
Well, we just finished talking about that, right? Like it's not a comfortable thing to do. I can't imagine sitting at a table waiting for people to come and talk about a book. Like, yikes.
Yeah. Well, I'm left-handed, so trying to sign a book is not the easiest thing in the world, which I've now discovered. And going through school and coming out with just the side of my hand blue all the time because I've just smudged ink everywhere. So it's not fun.
Just add that to the list of things that makes it difficult.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? Obviously, social media, we talked about. Maybe trying to get eyes on your book, getting out to the local bookstores, so on and so forth. Book number 2. That's a lot. That's a lot already.
Part of a group on Instagram, we're having a book giveaway for Australians as 20 authors in the group. Nice. So there's going to be a competition going out starting on the 1st of November, finishing, I think, the 22nd or 23rd of November, and then getting drawn at some point after that. So that's pretty exciting. The group has been really good. They're all super helpful people. Any questions I've had about in the industry and other people as well asking questions, there's always someone who knows something and everyone's happy to help out. So that's been really awesome. So that's coming up. I think we've got an international ebook version as well that is going to be happening. I think that's going to be in December, but I need to confirm that. If not, it'll be early next year.
Okay, so an international contest similar to the one for Australia, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So yeah, it gets us a bit more exposure, and people who follow one of the accounts will then know the rest of us, and someone's going to get a book from all of us. So hopefully, it's another person who hopefully likes the book and can recommend it to other people.
Yeah. Oh, that's a great idea. So how did you stumble onto that? Is that your idea, or is that, just...
Definitely wasn't my idea.
No.
No, one of the members of the group, she just put up a message on Threads just asking if anyone in Australia would be interested. And I was like, yeah, I'm definitely keen. And the group came together pretty quickly. And we've had, I think, about a month of everyone just getting things organized, some teaser videos going out, who some of the other guys have really put a lot of effort into making some awesome videos. So it's been a lot of sharing of content and kind of getting to know each other a bit and helping each other. And we've come to a point where now we're going to be doing this competition, and hopefully it has a massive impact on all of us.
I hope so. Yeah, that sounds like a fantastic way to do things. Huh. Someone has a chance to win 20 books.
Yep.
From 20 authors.
Yep. So there's a mix of romance, there's some sci-fi, some fantasy, a mix of young adult, new adult. So it's a pretty big mix.
Cool. So how do your Australian fans get involved in that? Just follow on Instagram, did you say?
If you follow me on Instagram, then I'll be pushing out all the details.
So there you go. Just follow you on Instagram and everything will fall in place from that.
Yep.
Well, good luck with that. So you got about a month to roll with that, and we'll see how that works out for you.
Yep.
And I will look forward to, hopefully, the international portion of that. So you hope that we'll see how Australia goes.
Yeah, I think we're pretty set on doing an international one. We just wanted to do an Australian physical copy one first, just to really push up the local market.
Right. So it's physical for Australian, and then obviously ebook for the international. I love it.
Yep.
Look forward to it. Have you ever considered doing an audiobook for your book?
It's something that I never considered for going or for publishing now. It's definitely something that I'd be happy to look into. But
down the road.
I mean, I was never going to do it. So
You were never going to write back in the day, I guess, right? So
Yeah.
small steps, right?
Yep. I think the last thing people need to do is pay to hear me read my book.
Fair. How about I ask you to read a little bit from Dawn Left Behind?
Yep. It'll be the clearest indication of why I wouldn't be reading my own audiobook. But yeah.
I bet it'll be fine.
So this essentially takes place in the blurb. I've got like a quote at the start, and this is pretty much straight after that happens. Where the alley met the street stood an old street lamp with 6 glass panels. The actual post was made from a strange bottle green metal which Matthew had never seen before. There didn't seem to be a globe inside the frame. Instead, it was something now familiar to Matthew. The light was made of a massive swarm of the same magical sparks that Matthew had seen in the doorway, this time gold, floating out of the lamp as if the glass was not even there, and bathing the surrounding area in a warm orange light. Despite the sparks thinning out, some lingered and floated some distance from the lamp like tiny weightless snowflakes catching the sunlight. The street was made of cobblestones of varying grey tones. Looking back, Matthew could see the front facade of the buildings. He decided it was probably a good idea to take out his phone and take some photos. The buildings surrounded him all seemed to be of Georgian architecture, mostly red brick with light grey window framings, arches and parapets. Further down the street were some buildings which were cream or white, however they were too far away and the light was too dull for Matthew to be sure. Turning back, Matthew took some photos of the street lamp. He continued to stare for a moment, transfixed on the lamp and the beautiful light emanating from it. So distracted was he of his surroundings that he didn't hear someone walking up beside him. "Hello, what are you doing there?" came a girl's voice. Matthew turned toward the voice and shrieked. Standing before him, like any other person, was a cat. She stood bipedal, a short, stumpy body, long waving tail, and covered head to toe in blue-grey fur. She had small white patches just under her eyes, going onto her cheeks. Strangely, at least to Matthew, she was wearing a white flared dress with a light blue coat over the top. She also had black framed glasses similar to Matthew's. Matthew's shriek very much startled her, and she let out a scream. "Oi, what are you two doing over there?" shouted a man in full London Bobby garb from down the street. He immediately began to run in Matthew's direction, retrieving an object from his belt. Matthew would have been scared to death if this had happened in dawn, let alone in dusk. He had no idea what would happen to him if he were arrested, no matter how civilized dust seemed from his brief visit so far. In his fear, Matthew turned and dashed back into the alleyway. The necklace around his neck once again increased its vibration and pulled him toward the side of the doorway. Taking a look back, he bashed into a stack of crates which bundled over, but luckily he did not overly impede his getaway. Once he reached the corner of the building and the alley turned, the necklace pulsed white. The officer chasing Matthew was now sprinting down the alley after Matthew. "Come back here, boy," he shouted. Matthew took hold of the necklace, mid-stride, and pulled the pin. After a few quick flips of the coin, it stopped and the pin clicked back into place. The spark-lit doorway appeared out of nothing in front of Matthew a few meters away. Not missing a step, Matthew ran through the doorway, which spun around him and everything turned a bright white once again.
Hey, wow. There you go. I noticed a post you had on your Instagram, and that scene, did you have a post with that?
Yeah, so I made up a video on Canva, and I also have that doorway on my website on the page for the book. So essentially, I sat there for a long time putting together a lot of different layers of smoke and sparks and all that kind of stuff into a shape of a doorway. And then on the website, I used a few tricks to make it look like things were sparkling and moving. And then I essentially just took a video of that part of the website and then used that in my video.
Cool. As you were reading it, I don't know, I just envisioned that exact video that you created. So that's pretty cool.
That's good to hear. It
Yeah.
means it
Yeah.
makes
Well,
sense.
it does. Obviously, we all promote our work in different ways, but I like the fact that when you're reading it, I saw what you were trying to promote with that video. So that's cool. And by the way, your reading is fantastic. Us North Americans love to listen to Australians speak, anyways. Any Australian reading a book is good by me.
We do have a good rep for just, I don't know, sounding pleasant, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. Yeah, love Australian accent. All jokes aside, you read a good excerpt there. It definitely pulled me in. I think it was a good choice for sure.
It was definitely hard trying to find something to read out, which also didn't give too much away.
That's the hardest part, right? Because you want it you want it to be engaging, but you don't want to share anything that's gonna ruin it.
The same as writing the blurb. It's the hardest part.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah. If I ever get to a point where I publish, I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. All right, sir. First of all, I give you an open invite to have you back to maybe talk about book 2 or to talk about your promotion in the new year if that rolls out. Open invitation. I'd love to have you back. I think your story is definitely interesting. I think maybe it's going to touch a little bit more the fact that it's a character that you're trying to immortalize. That changes how you view the book for me, and I don't know if that was your intention. That's the intention that I take from it, and that's how I'm going to promote it on the podcast side. Pretty amazing to be able to do that for your brother-in-law. That's what hits home mostly for me. I'd love to have you back again sometime next year to talk a little bit more about how the progress is going and see how sales have picked up for you.
Yep, awesome. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about the book and talk about myself. And hopefully people will pick up the book. That's the plan.
That's the plan. And you are very welcome. It was my pleasure. And we shall talk again sometime.
Yep. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.